Dear Venerable Sir, Dhamma friends, we are going to take time for a Dhamma talk. May everyone settle down for the talk and give the consent with 3 times sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Namo tasse bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhasse. Seelavanta uso kottita bhikkhuna panchupadanakkhandha dukkhato samati manasika tabbati. Dear Venerable Sir, Dhamma friends, this is time for a Dhamma talk. Usually this is the starting point of the journey towards Dhamma, or the understanding things as they are. The first and foremost part of this journey is to listen or to have kind of theoretical understanding. Simply we can say book knowledge. So this is the starting point, and when and where someone find it is interesting, someone find it is worthwhile, then only he or she will try to remember it, or otherwise it will forget about. So therefore, whenever we are listening to Dhamma, whenever we are listening to a talk, this is the starting point. So if someone find it is interesting or relevant to one's own life, then only he or she may remember it and contemplate upon it, or develop deductive knowledges and rationalization take place. And still it appear more pragmatic, more rational, more practical, then only then he or she may come and take time to sit and meditate, or do walking meditation, or try to be mindful in the day-to-day activities. So therefore, before coming to this practical side of mindfulness in your day-to-day activities or sitting and walking, one has to go through this first simple listening, theoretical understanding, and then internalization in terms of deductive knowledge, and then only practical part come into being. So we people, we have to think, have gone through these stages. That's why we thought of take time on meditation, specifically in a residential retreat like this. But even then, listening the instructions and Dhamma talks, that means theoretical understanding, it must be a repetitive thing in order to replenish our understanding. So therefore, when and where we do residential retreats, we have to facilitate the retreat in number of ways. According to the Buddha, the first and foremost thing is you observe precepts, you administer precepts, you undergo moral restraint. So in this retreat, we have taken the 8 precepts as the base. So every one of us abiding by these 8 precepts. And once that is been cleared, that is been clarified, accepted, the next thing is listening to instructions as well as theoretical understanding or theory. That is what we are doing now. And yet another one aspect of it is to take part in discussions, in interviews, in question and answers. That's also another way, brushing your knowledge and put you into the correct path. And once this moral restraint, theoretical understanding, and clarified your doubts, you are more enriched to sit and meditate or do walking meditation, or simply we can say to do concentration meditation as well as insight meditation. So even though you have already taken precepts and listened and discussed, if you are not doing this concentration and vipassana meditation, there won't be any change in your personality. There won't be any change in your likings and disliking, your dispositions. So therefore, meditation also necessary, both in concentration as well as in insight, but it must be facilitated with moral restraint, theoretical understanding and the discussion. So that is why in a day's program, we have allocated time for discussions, talks, sitting, walking, and that is how it goes. So when and where we allocate time for a talk, we have number of sources. First and foremost is listening directly to the canonical presentation. That is what we call Tipitaka in Pali, and it's a colossal accumulation of knowledge, and Theravada tradition claims it's the most authentic preservation of the teaching of the Buddha. And that is also in Dhamma Vinaya. One part is pertaining to the monastic life, discipline. The other one is pertaining to Dhamma, to understand things as they are. So here in this talk, we have taken discourse from the Dhamma, that is called Sutta in Pali, and it is the name of the Sutta is known as Seelavanta Sutta or Sila Sutta. Last time or last month also we have taken the same particular sutta, and I thought of advancing along the same thing, but even then this must be something digestible to the newcomers as well as the beginners. So therefore, more than taking the presentation of the theory in the sutta, my main aim is to how to put into in our sitting meditation, how to put that theory into walking meditation, how to make use in our day-to-day activities. So if I to start the talk, if I am to translate the Pali phrase that I cited as the day's Dhamma talk, here Venerable Sariputta, the general of the Dhamma, of the appointed by the Buddha, is answering to a question raised by Venerable Kottita, another renowned disciple of the Buddha. And as an answer he says, once the disciple endowed with moral restraint or taken precepts, he or she must wisely and in a good way practice of the Dhamma by contemplating or adverting the mind to see the five aggregates as kind of aberration, as a kind of a friction, as a kind of a suffering. So whenever you listen to it, it appears like something negative, appears like something nihilistic, or appears like something discouraging like, but when and where you keep on practicing, this is a must. You must understand whatever the five aggregates, so-called, are creating kind of a friction, creating kind of aberration, creating kind of a suffering, or without observing them from that perspective, we are going to indulge them, and that is we call pleasure principle. When and where we are not looking at our five aggregates as a kind of aberration or kind of friction or kind of a suffering, our mind or untrained mind naturally entertaining them, thinking that my body is for the pleasure, thinking my feeling must be always pleasurable, and my cognition and recognition of the materiality always must be to the pleasurable part, pleasing part. I must do away with whatever unpleasant, whatever frictional, whatever suffering, and whatever the thing we do, that is to say our volitional activities or our willful activities, we always try to make more happy. And when and where the consciousness arises as the last aspect of the aggregate, it's always seeking me and not me relationship and try to put me on the pleasurable side, pleasure seeking. Or it's a universal character, and all the worldly sciences, worldly skills, knowledges, in order to maximize this pleasure principle. Specifically with this scientific and technological development, we have increased the momentum and the acceleration of our life, and therefore we are chasing behind the pleasure, and not that it is an utterly wasteful thing, scientifically and as infrastructural and technologically we have quite advanced, but unavoidably present generation have to understand the most the frustrated, tensed and mentally disturbed generation when we compared with the historical evidences. So therefore, whatever the technological, whatever the infrastructural or communication-wise advancements, we can't do away with this frustration. We can't do away with mental problems. So therefore one has to look back and see, by this so-called advancement, have we achieved something lasting, or have we achieved internal external balance or mental balance or physical or health-wise balance? It's an open question. And the Buddha, about 2600 years ago, he came out with this hypothesis, this all five aggregates, nothing but a friction. So therefore, observing the five aggregates from this viewpoint, we're adverting your mind to look at the body and physical parts or physical universe is a substrata creating a friction. You must have certain amount of theoretical understanding. You must have certain amount of appreciation of this theoretical understanding. And the second thing was, you must have some deductive knowledge, rational knowledge. Is there any meaning of this kind of a outlook? Is there any meaning to take this endeavorance to look at it on at least on experimental basis? Otherwise you will never strive. So that is how theory knowledge as well as deductive knowledge is necessary, and then it becomes utterly spiritual. It becomes utterly religious, because it appears like somewhat contradictory with the day-to-day pleasure principle. So that is why we have to come to a place like this. We have to observe precepts. We have to associate with like-minded people, then only, if at all, this correction of our view can happen. So therefore you can't expect overnight changes. You can't expect big change after listening to one talk, to repetitively do it, to repetitively listen to it, or to repetitively reflect upon them, and then only one day you may see the theory or the hypothesis the Buddha presented. So till that, it appears like painfully slow. Till you understand or till you realize the truth, the early part is utter investment without much of gain. It's like agricultural venture. You have to invest money and wait till the crop come up to the maturity, flowering and harvesting. Not like industrial business, just fixing a factory and getting the product out, but just like a very patient thing. So, after a very crucial event, one of the scientists in America, he met up with this question, and he wanted to know how much time it takes for an individual to understand this outlook, this kind of adverting of the mind, necessary for someone to verify and justify this is a worthwhile experiment. In other words, how many days you must meditate to validate or verify this is something tangible, this is something verifiable, and that is something beneficial. It's a crucial problem from the American point of view. So Richard Davidson, once he went to the Tibet and met with His Holiness Dalai Lama, and he saw many Tibetan lamas are meditating and very less amount of frustration, and they are living very religious kind of life. And he asked the question from Dalai Lama, His Holiness Dalai Lama, Bhante, how much time it takes for someone to verify or get confidence about this kind of way of life, because you all are born with Buddhism and you are practicing and you have tradition. He says it is very simple, you have to practice 10,000 hours of meditation, that's it. So then the scientist was so shocked to say, how one can have 10,000 hours of meditation according to the American calendar? Impossible. Then he discussed again and again with His Holiness Dalai Lama, and Dalai Lama is telling, you Americans find it very difficult to have people, those who have practiced 10,000 hours, but in Tibetan population, so much of percentage already they have practiced 10,000 now. Because their day-to-day life, it's a matter of practicing. So therefore, in your life, 1 hour a day, if you are practicing, that means 10,000 days. Impossible. But our way of life is different because we are naturally meditating. So, but still, that Richard Davidson was not happy. So, he took some instructions and selected some bright cases, candidates, and he took part in a retreat for continuous 3 months. And then he checked the brains with the lamas practicing in Tibet and the new meditators from the American background. So they were checking the forefrontal lobes of the brain, left brain hemisphere as well as the right brain, and he found very difficult to get significant changes from brain check in the functional MRI scan. But when he checked Dalai Lamas, he can see clear differences. Their brain has been kind of evolved, so changes are there. So he gave up this idea to see how much it is worthwhile, how much it takes time for someone to understand the value of meditation. So, but he can continue to practice. And then he wanted to give the maximum facilities, maximum instructions, maximum conducive conditions. And after 3 months, he says some people, their attention is shifting from the left hemisphere of the brain to the right hemisphere. So when and where this attention changed, huge positive thinking in their life, holistic thinking in their life, as well as some kind of a self-sympathy happening, but very difficult to see the significant difference. So, but he was convinced. But anyway, still he found very difficult to sell this idea in a busy life like that, specifically like America. So then he wanted to reduce it again and again. Ultimately, he came back to a conclusion: you have to undergo 3 retreats of 10 days. That means 30 days. And then, with the help of the teachers and facilities and all the amenities, one may see kind of a difference. That means the 5 aggregates you have taken for your pleasure principle, even though you take as pleasurable and causes pleasure, utterly they are creating suffering, utterly they are friction or aberration. So therefore, not to have that kind of a wrong way of observation, but contemplate upon the materiality. For an example, out of 5 aggregates, materiality as a friction. So that is how the Buddha presents the meditation also. And just like I mentioned in the last retreat also, whenever you take the whole materiality and to say it's a kind of a friction, it's a kind of aberration, so it's a kind of a source of suffering, very difficult to comprehend because so much of material shapes and the manners are outside. And here Venerable Sariputta is asking, take your own body. Take your own body, try to keep it for 5 minutes, then you can see suffering. Keep the body in one posture for 5 minutes, then you can see suffering. Then you can see heat. Then you can see the tormenting nature. And you can see different facets, so changing. Therefore, that is also appear like negative at the beginning. So therefore, the instructions given by the Buddha is to do this experiment. You have to have internal and external conducive conditions, something like for a surgery. For a clinical surgery, you must have a theater completely assured with disinfection. And you must take the doctors, equipments, nurse and the patient, everyone disinfected. And then you have to have kind of anesthesia also. And with the disinfected atmosphere, you have to anesthetize the patient. Then only you can cut open the disease area and then do the whatever the changes happen. So this is somewhat similar according to the meditation instructions and the meditation progress. The disinfection is almost like moral restraint. The anesthesia, general, is something like concentration training or concentration restraint. And the cutting and analyzing is something like wisdom training. So therefore, the Buddha, he recommend, just like recommending a operation theatre for the clinical surgery. He says, as far as you are living in a capital city or a town or urban area or a village, it's very difficult to keep the mind focused for this kind of a spiritual thing. So the Buddha recommend go into a forest, sit under a tree, or go to a solitude place. It is like a theatre outside or macroclimate you need for the meditation. And once you go into that, you have 4 cardinal postures. The Buddha mentioned to start the operation, you must select the sitting posture. Sitting posture is the most conducive for a beginner. So that is why in countries like Sri Lanka, sitting means meditation. Meditation means sitting. They never think about other postures because it has been so accustomed. But this is only for the beginners. So therefore still we adhere to that kind of a condition. You sit. And once you sit there, your main thing you try to achieve is keep the body without volitional movements, without willful movements. So therefore you try to do away all the volitional, conscious, willful movements, and then try to see, even though you stop willful movements, volitional movements and conscious, there are a lot of activities happening. We call the biological activities. So now your focus must be to this, to observe, that is to be fully vigilant, fully diligent to see what is happening to your body even without your conscious movements. Willful thing, volitional thing, that metabolism, how it's happening. Not only the bodily activity, the verbal activities also must be restrained. So keeping the body still and not to talk are the 2 things you are facilitating in the sitting posture. That does not mean the body is not moving. Body is moving involuntarily. Your voluntary movements you stop or you restrain as much as possible and keep the body just like a pyramid in shape or an ant hill or dagaba, the pyramid shaped structure. So you can see the sitting posture once you adjusted. There's a complete triangle touching the ground, and you keep the hand in such a way toward the upper part also is conical in shape, so that means it's naturally established. And once you adjust the body and see materiality, even though you are not changing, what is happening? So sitting posture is a kind of a conducive cardinal way of posture you prepare. So whenever you sit like this, that means sitting on the ground and keep the body symmetrical and keep the body relaxed, don't get tensed, and just close your eyes in order to bring the attention inward. It's very important, otherwise mind is always outwardly. So you select your body as your object of meditation, you make it symmetric, you make it relaxed, you make it not tensed, and focus your attention to inward by closing your eyes and try to keep as long as possible to see what kind of metabolic actions, things are happening. After long experimenting, the Buddha discovered the body according to the meditation jargon, made out of 4 elements. Air element, earth element, heat element, or fire element, water element. So for the beginner, those who have not experienced much of mindfulness, the Buddha found the air element is the easiest thing to spot because it is moving. So therefore, just observe yourself, observe your body, or we say be mindful on your body, or be diligent on your body, and try to see the movements. That movements may be expansion, contraction. So these are the intrinsic nature of the air element. So when you keep eyes closed, focus your attention inside, you can see the movements. So it can happen in number of ways or number of stages. First and foremost, or most important thing is bringing the attention inwardly, or bring the attention to within the body. That's a great task for a beginner, because the mind is naturally going out through the ear, through the eye, through the nose, through the tongue, through the tactile sensation, and wandering thoughts. So not to entertain, not to indulge outwardly, but look inwardly, we call insight. That is how the term insight came into being. So when and where the body being inside, it appear like trapped. Example given is, when you see a wild water buffalo in the wilderness, they are very strong animals, and for the forest dwellers, very dangerous animal. But in agricultural countries, they catch hold and bring to the village and tame them and use for harrowing and as a draft animal. And when and where that kind of a thing happen, moment you take the wild buffalo from the wilderness, it becomes so aggressive. It becomes so unruly. So therefore, knowing that, skillful villagers, what they do is, they somehow or the other catch hold and drive a very strong peg into the earth, or take a very strong tree and tie the buffalo and keep it in the village, out of the forest. Our mind is just like a buffalo out of the wilderness. Soon it come into the inside. Or when catch hold of bird, wild bird, you put into a cage, you can see how much it is fighting to go out. Something like that, our mind is very hesitant or unhappy to keep inside. So therefore the Buddha says it is like a mad monkey mind, jumping in front of the branch to the branch. So if you try to keep restraint, it's so much of unruly, uncontrollable situation. So therefore early sittings, or early your endeavorance, or early your practice in sitting is appear like the fish out of water. Very difficult to keep inside the body, and even if it is inside, it appears so boring, appears so monotonous. So therefore you must have so much of patience in order to keep the body inside. And after that only the first stage, when the mind come and stay inside the body, is the first and foremost stage. You will understand when you are sitting, you are not walking. You will understand you are not standing. You will understand you are not sleeping, but you are sitting. And then you have to ask your mind, what is the way you can verify that you are not walking? What is the way that you can verify you are not standing? What is the ways to verify that you are not sleeping? Then, if you have that kind of adverting of the mind or direction of the mind, then you may see kind of a touch of your lower part of the body on your cushion, or if you are sitting on the earth, on the ground. How do you feel the difference between walking posture and the sitting posture? And to express that very experience. I know I am sitting because I feel the touch. I feel the hard points. I feel pressure points. And expressing that very experience will never happen unless otherwise you get used to the discussions. You get used to the question and answers. Otherwise you don't find any value. You don't find any kind of a significance of expressing your under-the-nose experience. Sit and see how do you verify that you are sitting. How do you know under your very nose you are sitting? And if you can't convince the other person in the discussion, whatever the original experience you have, it is no avail, it is no use, because you can't express it. So therefore they have to have discussions to express yourself, or listen to the other people doing the meditation and expressing themselves or reporting themselves, and that is equally important. And once that is assured, then the listener can advise you whether your focus or adverting nature is going to the correct position or not. And so therefore this, to understand the abrasive nature, to understand the friction, to understand the suffering nature, even though it is abrasive, even though it is suffering, even though it is friction, your expression or your ability to express that very thing is a very, very specific thing. Never you learn that kind of a thing in a classroom. No teacher will teach you how to express your under-the-nose experience, because our whole knowledge is a borrowed one. Whole knowledge belong to the history. We never, on knowledge-wise, come here and now. So when and where you come here and now, whatever you experience is directly personal touch. But hardly we can express it. Hardly we can articulate it. So therefore we have to have a special effort to prove, to verify that I am sitting and I know I am sitting. And each and every shape you are mentioning, the manner you are mentioning, a feeling you are mentioning, everything soon become a source of suffering. Soon become a friction. Soon become kind of a aberration. So therefore, if you do not have correct perspective, your report itself will be in sour in taste. It will never your report in the sweet way. So therefore there is a special kind of a effort you have to take in the discussion, in terms of interviews, in terms of discussions, and then only one day you will learn how to sit and wait, how to focus the attention on your sitting posture, and how to report. And that means your attention is now, the listener can make sure whether you are reporting something under your very nose, here and now. If it is here and now, we call you are mindful. We call you are diligent. You are vigilant. And that very experience no one can deny, because it is something you are experiencing. But you can imagine in our day-to-day life how rare we talk something we are experiencing. We are talking and listening and discussing almost borrowed things, almost second-hand knowledge, hardly any direct touch. So therefore, even you are sitting and expressing how you are feeling on the sitting itself is very, very revolutionary. It's very, very radical in nature. And once that is happened, you have to understand, you have to diligent, you have to be vigilant to see what are the metabolic activities happening within your body, not only the touch, many other things are happening. So some people, I don't know whether it is due to their past experience or their sharpness or their diligence, they feel the most intrinsic part or most unavoidable part of a living body is the breath. It is the rock bottom layer. All the others are additional. Living body must have a breathing. So, Pali term Pana or Prana is some must drinking, some must swallowing, some must sucking air. That's what's called living being. If you are a living being, there should have a absorption of air, inhalation of air, internal draft of air. So one day when the things are calmed down, one day you will hit that target to say your body has kind of a body knowledge, it is keeping relationship with the atmosphere. And that is what we call the breathing, or sometimes in Sanskrit it is called prana, pranayama, or in Pali it is called anapana. Whatever may be, whenever the body, mind becomes calmed down in the body posture, and when you are promoting to keep the mind more and more with the sitting posture, within that you may see expansion, contraction, or stiffness, tension, movements, or kind of a air movement. Not that you must see it, but sometimes it can happen. If it is happening, that's a kind of a more focusing of your mind. You are not only looking at the whole body or the touching sensation of the body. Within the body you can see the function of air. It's a function of air is expansion and contraction or pushing nature. So whenever it is happening, if you observe it, you must be more focused. You must be more alert. So that is how you make your mindfulness more sharp. That's how you make your mindfulness more efficient. That's how you make your mindfulness more versatile. You start with the big object, the whole body, and then try to see this metabolic action. If at all, if it is coming along with your way, the in-breath and out-breath. When and where you to see in-breath and out-breath, it's a very clear sign you are here and now. You are alert, you are mindful, and the listener clearly share with you if you can really express how in-breath differ from the out-breath experience. That's a very, very sharp thing, maybe too much of demanding, but it never depends on whether you are a male or female, whether young or old age, or educated or not, or rich or poor. Some people can understand not only that you are discriminating among this posture, sitting posture versus walking or standing. If you are sharp enough, you can understand this is in-breath, not the out-breath. And when the out-breath happens, you can clearly, discreetly say, this is out-breath, not the in-breath. So that sharpness may be too much for a beginner, but this is the way mind becomes sharp. And if you can keep that kind of a breath, that when discrete understanding, delimited understanding of the in-breath versus out-breath, and number of breaths, maybe few cycles of breath, maybe few seconds of breaths, maybe few minutes of breaths, then you can see not only the difference between in-breath and out-breath, your mind will be so sharp, there's a difference between in-breath to in-breath. More you practice with the in-breath, 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 there's a kind of trends. Sometimes become calm and short. Sometimes become very aggressive and long. And out-breath to out-breath also changes are there. That is how your focus or mindfulness first start with the posture, and if the breath become prominent, you take the breath as more sharper object and see the discrete discrimination between in-breath and out-breath. Once that is there, you are more plunging into the object, you become more closer to the object, mindfulness becomes very sharp, and after you can see long in-breath versus short in-breath, long out-breath versus short out-breath. Like a lot of changes are happening. So this is how the mind progress in meditation with respect to your body. And when that is happening, there are some other supporting suttas or discourses of the Buddha. The Buddha mentioned when and where, or as far as you see gross in-breath and gross out-breath, your mind is more defiled, mind is more agitated, mind is more abrasive, mind is more with the friction when compared with the subtle breath. So when the mind ready to observe that your early gross breath becomes subtler and subtler and subtler, that means your mind is advancing, your friction is becoming less and less, and aberration becomes less and more you can keep the breath in view with, and that is how you try to do away with this abrasive nature, frictional nature, suffering nature of the breath, so your mind as well as the body become calm and quiet. If you are not instructed well, if you have not experienced that kind of a thing in the correct way, you may tend to do forced breathing, or you may tend to do harsh kind of breathing. That's the way you contradict the development of your meditation. Or if you are not towards forced breathing, another danger is mind can fall into sleep. So now you have to understand how to manage in between not to fall into sleep or not to get agitated or not to expect gross breath. So you have to learn tightrope walking. You have to learn how to ride a push bike without falling into either side. So now your meditation is more dramatic, it is demanding, but its thrills and frills are there. You know, whenever the mind becomes lethargic, fall into sleep. When the mind becomes over-enthusiastic, it will never allow the breath to calm down. You tend to do forced breathing. So each and every time, by interviews, by discussions, by sharing with others only, you have to find the middle path just to keep the track with in-breath and out-breath. When it's going there, if you are very, very sharp, if you are very, very balanced mind, if you are with the equipoised mind, then you can season yourself from gross breath to subtle breath without losing your balance. This kind of refinement in your life, this kind of refinement of your skillfulness never happen in worldly subjects, because this is quite an involved thing. This is quite a personal touch. And today you may find kind of very subtle breaths and you manage some or the other to keep the equilibrium, but tomorrow you'll be utter failure. Everything will be chaotic. Your mind will be agitated and you will get up and go thinking everything goes for 6. And sometimes you fall into sleep. And after minutes only you comes to know, though you come and sit for meditation, ultimately what happens is mind become lethargic, slimy, not agile, fall into sleep. So these things are not your personal mistakes. They are essential mileposts or kilometer posts on your path. So therefore don't be so critical about yourself. Don't consider these things as personal mistakes. These are really, really advancing signs. You must have kind of a positive thinking. Without mistake, no progress. Each and every mistake, you learn at your cost. You learn at the expense of your disheartening, negative kind of thing. But more and more you practice, you go deep, you go sleep, very subtle states of breath. And one day, of course in a 1 or 2 days residential retreat is hardly possible to expect that kind of thing. But if you are in a longer retreats, 3, 4, 5 days time, you can see the breath ultimately goes to very, very subtle. At that time it is called the breath become beautiful. Breath become very calm giving. Santocheva panitocha. And you feel it is so subtle, and you complain sometimes, unperceivable. But if you reflect back, you can see your mindfulness is persistent. Your mindfulness is continuous. But the grossness of the aberration, the grossness of the friction, the grossness of the suffering is slowly reducing. But in our day-to-day life, what we do is we never keep our attention with one object. It is changing from hearing to the seeing and smelling and tasting and touching and multivarious. Easily one can anticipate there is no agenda. In our day-to-day life, jumping from eye to the ear, ear to the nose, nose to the tongue, tongue to the body, body to the mind, and there is no order in jumping. That's what we call the monkey mind. But after long experimenting, long sacrification, long correct perspective, you can see not only the mind, the meditative mind, learns how to keep an object in view it, you can just plunge into the object and go deeper and deeper, something like zoom in an electron microscope. From outside it is go deeper and deeper, and when you are going, you can see different facets of the materiality. That is what happened in the physics. And they have discovered the microscope, telescope, and they wanted to see distance object and very close objects. So they can zoom in and zoom out. Likewise, you can focus their mindfulness to a particular object, and sometimes you plunge in, or you can come out and again plunging in, and more you go deeper, let's say called sharpness of the mindfulness, you can see very subtle layers of the same object. So therefore it depends. Your inflicting nature, your suffering nature depends on the relationship with the object you are dealing with, the object you are talking with. There will be a number of ways, the closeness to the object. More and more you become mindful, the object becomes very, very subtle, sometimes unperceivable. According to the Buddha, or according to the Venerable Sariputta, when the object becomes subtle, your suffering becomes less. When the object becomes gross, you are utterly suffering. So therefore, spiritual experience, not going for the go-go show, not going for the break dance, not going for this and that music, but instead go to the other side, see the subtle side of the materiality. So now your mind is more open, it becomes wider, so you can understand with the common sense, with the comparison, how is this go-go life? It is like a burning the candle from both the ends. Instead, if you go deeper layers, you can see kind of a charging of your battery, you feel kind of a spirituality. So don't try to rush to a decision. Only thing in the early part of your meditation is giving your mind a different perspective, a different viewpoint, different outset to the materiality. So that materiality is something under your very nose. It is not an imagination. It is not book knowledge. It is not a borrowed knowledge. Of course, theory you understand as a book knowledge. You borrow it from the Buddha or Venerable Sariputta, but when you put into practice, you see the direct touch. And that direct touch, that very direct touch, never depend on whether you are a male or female. That direct touch never depend on whether you are a rich or poor. Never depend on your ordained or non-ordained. Never depend on whether you are a Buddhist or non-Buddhist. So that is the point, you go to the direct touch with the humanity, and without knowing that, as far as you don't have that kind of subtle knowledge, you always discriminate. Always you are with the sectarianism. Always you make social differences and social problems. More and more you go deeper, you find unknown people, unpracticed people, unrestrained people talk and carried away by these gross waves. But you know how to glide them. You can go in deep and you go to the subtle layers, and there you are in a comfort zone, a least frictional path. So if you have any compassion upon yourself, if you have any kind of a well-being towards oneself, not only always you live in the subtle part, at least you must have a discrete understanding. The level of suffering depends on the which part you are associating. Objects have, materiality have so much of facets. So what you select, what is the grossness of it, depends on your perspective. So otherwise you think the materiality brings happiness, materiality brings suffering. But the Buddha's concept is, materiality has no that kind of infliction upon you. Your mind, how does it associate the superficial way? Or how does your mind penetrate into the object and see the subtle part? Accordingly, breath become beautiful, or breath become gross. So therefore, our endeavor here in this retreat is to start from one point and observe the chronological changes of the breath. Or sometimes you can see the chronological change of your sitting posture also. Or when you are walking meditation, you can see how the left leg touch of the ground and the right leg touch of the ground. When and where you walk, may say, persistently with 10-15 minutes, how much changes you can feel the touching sensation. And amazing, when you are running to a train, when you are running to a bus, when you are running for this kind of thing, we never notice them. If you take full time on the walking path and try to see left leg and the right leg separately, you can see in the ankle how much, maybe 50 kilos. Changing from the one to the other, you don't feel 50 kilos. Imagine you take a bag of cement with 50, changing from one hand to the other hand, how difficult. But your whole body weight, you taken to the ankle, whole body weight usually on one ankle, and it won't feel it, because you are not looking at it. If you look at it, you can see how subtle the foot, get the footing on the different texture of the ground and still try to keep your pace. And it's a most efficient machine on the earth. If you study the backhoe, you can see how the hands are working with so much of hydraulics and the lever system, and you can see how your hand is working, your leg is working, and you will never appreciate. So therefore one person mentioned, he said, you may appreciate the Tower Eiffel, you may appreciate that and this man-made gadgets, as far as you don't know your body. As far as you are not appreciating here and now, because this is the most miraculous thing. And the thing is, unfortunate enough, the human beings use this machine without the handbook. We never read the handbook. We misuse it. To read, to understand the handbook, you have to love this body. The body must be your best friend, and you must associate it very seriously, very mindfully, very diligently, then you may find your whole knowledge, your whole skill is to eccentric, make you eccentric, to be unmindful. More and more skills you have, more and more popularity you have, so much so you are eccentric. You are out of your present moment. So bringing back to the present moment is the skillfulness or self-compassion or well-being of oneself. So if you understand it, more and more you take time for meditation, you may find shortcuts to be self-realized, to be self-aware, to be here and now, and then wherever you go, you have your best friend with you. And that will be an anchorage for you for any kind of vicissitudes of the world. So therefore, if you have any kind of well-being, any kind of compassion, any kind of sympathy to yourself, be with your body, make it comfortable, make it symmetrical, and try to keep the attention here and now. That's a technique to understand the abrasive nature of your materiality or the frictional nature, suffering nature, and more you can make it more subtle, make it more comfortable by this kind of a training. It is not moral restraint, it is called concentration restraint and the wisdom restraint. So therefore take time in sitting as well as in walking, as well as in your day-to-day activities. Be unto yourself. Don't talk each other, don't disturb others, and be here and now and try to experience it and try to share with others. Then I will guarantee this retreat will be a success. With that remark, I would like to sum up the talk today. Thank you very much for your attentive listening. Thank you very much.